We're turning to Lebanon now, which has declared a coronavirus state of emergency. This is in a country that's already 5 months into a series of anti-government demonstrations, the biggest since Lebanon won its independence back in 1943. The protest movement bridges classes and sects. Citizens are revolting against a political system that is defined by sectarian identity and has failed to provide them with the economic basics. It's an ongoing story that has also revealed much about the failure of Lebanon's media outlets, too many of which are skewing their coverage since they are split along the same lines that politicians are. We're looking at one news site that's out to change the media mix and mess with mainstream news narratives. Megaphone is an online platform that produces punchy social videos and boundary-pushing opinion pieces, critical takes on the news and the way it's been covered. The Listening Post's Tariq Nafi now from Beirut on a news outlet that's tapping into voices left out by the mainstream.
We're in downtown Beirut, which for the past 5 months has been the epicenter of an uprising that has shaken Lebanon to its political core. People here have had enough of a dysfunctional power-sharing system, a broken economy, and an inept, self-serving elite. They have a mantra, which is kullun yani kullun. All of them means all of them, which means doing away with the entire old guard, which includes establishment media.
الإعلام هو سلطة رابعة وهو كتير مهم، يعني هو جزء من الثورة، بس آخر فترة الإعلام اللبناني قصر شوي بحقنا.
ولكن ما بعد الثورة اكتشفنا إنه في مبادرات مستقلة مثل Megaphone.
They were non-existent and then suddenly they were the go-to news outlet.
Megaphone فرجتك اليوم على الطريق، يعني سمعتنا صوت الناس الحقيقيين.
فعلا كان هو الميديا بلاتفورم الوحيدة اللي عم بتغطي الثورة day by day.
They opened also a space for many of the thinkers and the opinion leaders in Lebanon.
ميجافون هو كان يعني صورة الثورة بشكل ممتاز.
Megaphone is not the only media outlet chronicling Lebanon's uprising, but it is the most dynamic. Before the protest started in October 2019, the collective was producing around 2 videos a month. The uprising demanded more. Megaphone's mostly volunteer journalists, many of whom work a day job, were pulling all-nighters to keep up with the rhythm of the street. They were soon publishing as many as 2 or 3 videos a day, including an unedited snapshot from the street and Street Talk, which amplifies voices of the uprising. The content is sharp, slickly produced, and has occasionally put Megaphone's videographers in the crosshairs of the authorities.
It is often barbaric. We have people on our team who were physically attacked just because they were carrying a camera. But I don't believe these methods will silence anyone. Our primary aim is to target a specific age group who no longer get their news from television or newspapers because they are disgusted by the rhetoric and also because the format is simply not appealing.
The streets surprised us, and we were shocked at how politicized people became and how much they wanted to consume political content. And this forced us to address issues more responsibly and with output that is more critical than before.
So we are trying to produce something that empowers people who were previously disconnected from politics to follow and understand news developments and of course to react and eventually hold politicians accountable.
One of Megaphone's most successful formats came from a frustration of politicians getting too much airtime and too little pushback. Speech deconstruction skewers politicians with their own words. Exposing, for example, the ways in which they have tried to plant fear about the protests.
Television gave these people the freedom to give speeches for as long as they want, without giving anyone the opportunity to respond. It was a popular format because it hasn't truly been done before in other media. There is no need for the audience to watch a politician's 2-hour address. They were able to understand the bottom line and at the same time deconstruct and challenge arguments being made by politicians.
Critical journalism can be hard to come by in a country where politics, business and media are overwhelmingly a family affair. Just 12 families, most of which are directly involved in politics, control close to 50% of the media. The remaining 50% are run by political parties or the state. In Lebanon, media is politics by other means, but one channel has taken more flack for its coverage than any other. OTV is the mouthpiece of President Michel Aoun and his party, the Free Patriotic Movement. The channel routinely depicts protesters as hooligans prone to violence. They also peddle a conspiracy that the opposition is part of a foreign-funded plot.
Look, I am not claiming that OTV does not have a point of view regarding the so-called revolution. Actually, no media is neutral. I don't think there is no media out there.
Jad Abu Jawdi is OTV's head of news.
OTV represents a certain political view, which is known from its name and from its political belonging. However, it has been fair in its coverage, but you cannot control completely any guest that appears on air, either on the ground or in our studios. And maybe sometimes some of our guests have said things which we do not adopt, but people in the street link them directly to OTV as a TV station.
Yeah, OTV has definitely received the most heat in terms of their media coverage. And the extent of the inflammatory rhetoric from OTV is a bit, it's a bit over the top, which has really riled people up. Of course, at one point, because of how much heat they had to come in with unbranded microphones. And also, they have, of course, played a very important role in helping the political leaders and the elite kind of reshape themselves in light of these protests.
Not all Lebanese media outlets have taken such an aggressive position against the uprising. LBC, Al Jadid and MTV gorged on the protests when they began in October last year. Their coverage was wall-to-wall, and a significant portion of it was sympathetic, with correspondents around the country playing the role of interviewer cum therapist, handing an open mic to protesters to let rip. That sort of coverage was never going to last. Lebanon's elite, made up of powerful businessmen and former warlords, most of whom own the country's biggest media outlets, is adept at survival. And so channels like LBC and Al Jadid have moderated their tone and some would say gone back to doing what media in Lebanon do best, serving as platforms for politicians.
All these outlets are run by businessmen or politicians or people with political ambitions of sorts. So there is a certain threshold that they have in order to maintain their legitimacy officially in Lebanon among the elite. However, the way that they have given the space for major politicians and bankers and so on is beyond the right of reply.
At the beginning of the revolution or the uprising, the majority of the TV stations in Lebanon, they were one-sided. They were only covering the point of view of the people who are with the revolution and who are cursing, let's say, all the political spectrum in Lebanon. Media has to reflect the change, not make the change. Media has to cover the change. It does not have to make the change, or it will become a politically motivated media, which is far from being fair and from being professional.
That argument might be more convincing if Lebanese media weren't so resistant to change, so utterly compromised, unable to detach themselves from their ownership, unwilling to act as a check on Lebanon's elite. Lebanon's media are, like its politics, broken. A reckoning was overdue.
It is very difficult for one to think about political change without a fundamental change to people's source of information. When journalism confronts and challenges the various official narratives put forward by the sects, or the parties or the factions, then we can actually change the rules of the game in this country. So it is not a detail. The media is a fundamental pillar in this process, whose role is to deconstruct a regime that has lasted too long and cost the country too much.
The big challenge going forward is that because people have lost faith in traditional media, is how for us journalists who are trying to create alternatives that are based on accurate reporting, investigative work, inclusive narratives, is how do we win that trust back? Because now what we're seeing is that people are relying on memes, things shared on WhatsApp, and lots of rumors, and they don't want to look into traditional media anymore. As long as the media landscape remains the way it is, we cannot expect any significant change in Lebanon.